A unique game like Evolve requires a very particular developer, and that's Turtle Rock Studios. Their iterative process of development to figure out exactly what the alchemy is to have a fun asymmetric experience starts off with an air of mystery, and only through trying and playing their own games do they figure out how they really evolve. Evolve is all about providing the right tools for the player to create an exciting and memorable experience. To accomplish this, Turtle Rock had to fastidiously and repeatedly experiment and evaluate every aspect of the game's design to make Evolve what it is today. When you started, did you foresee what it is now? Were you able to conceive of this product as it's coming together in its final months?
It's kind of difficult because the game has changed so much. The overall idea is what we all thought it would be, but the details were not. It was just us playing this fundamentally good idea and then building on that and making it cooler and cooler.
So you originally only had one hunter in each class. Obviously time goes on and you're going to have multiple versions of hunters within each class. It's really cool to have that level of variety, but that does start to present balancing issues, how you started to make them very distinct from one another, but also so they could all play really well together.
It's about trying to give the players freedom of choice, but not overwhelm them, because there were so many options and it took so much for you and your teammates to choose the right combination to actually get that synergy that we have now. We wanted to guarantee that you have that and then put the depth into the character themselves.
While Evolve, with its variety of monsters and hunters, may seem like the clearest combination, arriving at this result was a long process. Monsters started out quite differently in form and perspective, and the hunters were a paper doll-like construct of various equipment. What's interesting though, when you look at all the different hunters, for your very first prototype, 5 months in, it was just 4 guys with assault rifles. So at what point did you see the need to have more and more distinct roles that each player would have in the course of a match?
Once we've had maybe 12 or 14 or somewhere around there pieces of gear where you spent a long time trying to figure out what the combination should be and realizing that there were bad combinations. If you took this piece and this piece and this piece in gear, I could almost guarantee that you would lose the game. It's really bad, right? If the team can lose before the game's even started, and we need to make sure they can't make that decision. So that led to classes.
You need to design your game in such a way that you're encouraging people to play the game the way it's intended to be played.
Obviously, the monsters as they are now is probably far removed from how they started and where they were at inception, especially Kraken, which was not a flying creature for quite a few years.
So Kraken used to be able to just glide. And you could glide really far, but you had to find really tall stuff to jump off of. And what we discovered over time is that having inherent advantages like fighting in a cave for Goliath was fun and interesting. Having your navigation taken away from you because there's no tall objects nearby, that just wasn't fun. So that's when we gave him the inherent ability to get off the ground through his own power.
And then Goliath, I think you can see, obviously the precedence of, King Kong and other, it's a little bit more familiar, but what was the journey of taking that core and then making him into something unique and distinct as he is in the game?
Goliath was a long time coming.
Yeah, I think we did like 6 versions of him or something, and I think 4 of them were playable in the game. So he was
the guinea pig.
Yeah, he was the first one. There's a reason that King Kong is a favorite, where you can see expressions in his face and you can see that he has feelings. And interestingly, Goliath needed to be our poster child for the game. It needed to be the one that everybody related to, that when they see a picture of this monster, they know that means evolve.
So let's talk about a few examples of things that were significantly altered during the course of development. I think one of the key ones, because it's still amazing for me to even conceive of it, is that originally the monster was played from the first-person perspective. Yeah. And it sounds like that's something that you guys wrestled with for a while before realizing that that just can't work.
Yeah, it was one of those things where we'd always just envisioned the game. All we've ever built as Turtle Rock Studios is first-person shooters, so we just always assumed that the monster would be first-person. Why would it not? That's what we do. And so, yeah, the monster had claws as first-person, and you'd see like their first version of Goliath was actually called Scorpion, and it was more like a giant crab. And so we had like you had these big claws on the side of the screen, and
Look kind of dopey.
And they looked pretty bad. There's a lot of problems with that. One, it felt like you were a guy in a suit. You didn't feel like you were a monster. It felt like you had these monster gloves on. We could have sold those or something later, right? Like monster gloves for Halloween. Then the other thing was we had traps and mines that you're stepping on, and there's all this awareness. You're surrounded by hunters a lot of times, and so being first person, you're blind to a lot of that. You can't see.
You get a harpoon in the back, and suddenly you can't move, and you have no clue why.
Right, and so we would have text that would show up on the screen that says, "You have been harpooned," and that's the best that we could do. And so we had all these problems, and we were wrestling with those problems for a long time. And a couple of the guys on the team took it upon themselves to experiment with making a third-person camera and just seeing what did that feel like. And that wound up being, was controversial across the whole studio, right? Some people were very adamant first-person shooter players and felt like third-person shooters are a completely different genre. And it's just one of those things where we had to just remind everybody to be open-minded about it, and let's put it in the game and try it.
You guys are starting to see just all those small incremental steps that you see has significant impact inside of the game. But that's because you're with that game so frequently. I mean, do you ever worry that sometimes like the forest and the trees, you're having a hard time separating them?
Yeah, we want to get the game in people's hands as soon as possible, right? Because that's where a lot of our lessons are learned.
One thing that's really important to us and really valuable to us that I don't know if the community knows, is that when the game comes out, it's not like we're done and we're wash our hands of it and Evolve is out there and whatever launches is the way that Evolve's going to be forever, right? The game is deep enough and there's enough strategy that they are going to figure out things that we've never done inside of this studio, combinations and strategies and that sort of thing. So for us, it's just more of the same. It's just now we've got more eyes on it. We're going to get more information, more data, more feedback. And so we're going to just continue rolling and, continue making adjustments.
What was the concept of the hunters? What was the core thing that was essential to sort of fleshing them out?
Giving them the tools that they needed to actually take down this massive monster and how to actually fight this monster who was not developed and designed completely already. So it's like a difficult problem to solve when you don't know how to fight this thing that isn't built.
There's a fine line between archetype and stereotype. Stereotype is a negative thing. Archetype is sort of a celebration. We like having characters that you can kind of fall in love with and get to know.
Let's catch that beast!